I need to tell you about a place that shouldn't exist. Not a haunted house, not a mansion where bad things happened once upon a time. I'm talking about an entire plane. Dragons, oceans, mountains, cities, millions of people swallowed whole by a single building. And it happened because a lonely teenage girl made friends with the thing living in her basement. This is Duskmourn, a plane where the house doesn't just have rooms, it has ecosystems, weather patterns, day and night cycles, and a consciousness that watches every single person trapped inside, feeding on their terror like you and I breathe air. Today, we're going inside. We're learning how an entire world died, how it happened in less than a decade, really just a few years, and while the girl who caused it still lives in that house, believing everything is fine. If you're ready for one of magic's most existentially horrifying planes, hit that like button and subscribe. And maybe check that your basement door is locked. Let's dive in. Duskmourn wasn't always a nightmare. Centuries ago, it was a high fantasy plane. Dragons soared over mountain ranges, ships crossed vast oceans, cities thrived with trade and culture. It was beautiful in the way so many planes are beautiful, diverse, vibrant, and alive. But there was something different about Duskmourn. Magic was incredibly rare. Most people lived their entire lives without ever encountering a mage or witnessing a spell. Power was scarce, and those who wanted it had to look elsewhere. So they turned to summoning. If you couldn't create magic yourself, you could call something from another realm that could. Bind it, control it, and make it serve you. It was dangerous, sure, but when you're desperate for power in a world where magic is almost non-existent, you take risks. And that's exactly what someone did centuries before our story begins. They summoned something from the demon realm, something ancient and hungry, something that called itself Valgavoth. The summoners thought they could control him, bind him as a service spirit, force him to obey their commands, use his power for their own ends. And for a moment, it seemed like they succeeded. Valgavoth tried to consume everything the moment he arrived. He was ravenous, overwhelming, unstoppable. But crossing between realms had weakened him. The summoner seized that moment of vulnerability and trapped him, bound him to the physical structure of their house, and locked him in the basement. For centuries, that's where he stayed, imprisoned, furious, waiting for someone to let him out. Fast forward to a few decades ago. A family called the Vendrells lived in that same house. They had no idea what was trapped beneath them. No idea their home had a history soaked in demonic summoning and desperate bindings. They were just a normal family, a mother, a father, and their daughter named Marina. Marina Vendrell was shy, bookish, the kind of teenager who spent more time in libraries than at parties, more comfortable with pages than with people. She was awkward at school, bullied even, the kind of kid who ate lunch alone and counted down the hours until she could go home and disappear into her books. She was lonely, deeply, crushingly lonely. And loneliness can make you vulnerable. One day, Marina went down to the basement. Maybe she was looking for something. Maybe she was just exploring. But she found something she wasn't expecting. Valgavoth. He spoke to her. Not as a monster, not as a demon lord. He spoke to her as a friend. Someone who understood her. Someone who listened when she talked about her day, her frustrations, the people who hurt her. For the first time in her life, Marina felt seen. She started visiting him regularly, talking to him, confiding in him. He was patient, kind even. He never judged her, never mocked her. He just listened and offered advice. But Valgavoth wasn't her friend. He was a predator, and he'd been waiting centuries for someone exactly like Marina, someone desperate enough, lonely enough, naive enough to trust him. He started directing her to books, old books, forbidden books, books containing magic that could weaken his bindings, and Marina, eager to please the only friend she'd ever had, read them, studied them, and learned them. Until one day, Valgavoth told her what he needed to be free. A sacrifice. Not just one person, many people. A ritual powered by blood and terror. And Marina, who'd been bullied and ostracized and hurt by her classmates for years, decided they would do just fine. We don't know all the details of what happened that night. We don't know how Marina lured them to the house. We don't know if she hesitated. We don't know if she felt guilt as she performed the ritual. What we do know is that she killed them, her classmates, the people who tormented her. She sacrificed them in a single brutal ceremony, feeding their deaths directly into Valgavoth's prison. And it worked. Empowered by the mass sacrifice, Valgavoth began to break free. Not all at once. He was still bound to the house itself, but he could move now. He could hunt. He could feed. The neighborhood started warping. Reality bent around the Vendrell house like gravity around a black hole. Adjacent houses began to twist, their walls stretching and merging with the original structure. Doors opened to rooms that shouldn't have existed. Hallways extended into possible distances. Marina's parents vanished. Whether Valgavoth killed them, or they fled, or they're still trapped somewhere in the growing labyrinth, we don't know, but they were gone. And Marina was alone with the demon she'd freed. That's when she realized what she'd done. That's when the horror of it hit her. Not just that she murdered her classmates, but that she'd unleashed something that wouldn't stop, couldn't stop. Valgavoth was still bound to the house, but now the house was growing, expanding, consuming everything it touched, and Marina understood, with sudden, terrible clarity, that this would never end. She confronted him, threatened to burn the house down, and because Valgavoth was still bound to the structure, that threat actually mattered. If the house died, he died. So they made a deal. He would restore her perception of reality. He would make everything look normal to her eyes. Her parents would return. Her classmates would be alive. The house would just be a house again. In exchange, she wouldn't resist. She wouldn't fight. She wouldn't try to stop what was coming. Marina agreed. And from that moment on, she's lived in a bubble of manufactured normalcy while the house continued to grow around her. She eats breakfast with her parents who aren't really there. She goes to school with classmates who are long gone. She lives in a home that hasn't existed for decades. She's the most protected person in all of Duskmourn, and that is the most tragic part of this story. What happened next is called the Ascension, and it took only a few years. The house didn't just grow, it metastasized. It absorbed the houses on either side first, then the entire neighborhood. Then it followed the roads and transit paths into the nearby city, swallowing buildings and people as it went. Survivors describe it like watching a wave of impossible architecture crash over everything they knew. One moment, you're walking down a familiar street. The next, the buildings are wrong. The doors lead to places they shouldn't. The sky is visible through windows, but when you look up, there's only ceiling. The house consumed population centers first because that's where Valgavoth's food was. Fear, terror, the screams of people realizing their world was ending. Then it took to the wilderness, the mountains, the forests. It even swallowed Rotru Wood, the last place on Duskmourn to fall, absorbing the final remnants of the world that was. And then, it took the sun. Now, Duskmourn doesn't have day and night in any natural sense. The house creates its own light cycles, artificial, controlled. Sometimes it's bright in one hallway and pitch black 3 doors down. Sometimes rooms have windows showing daylight that doesn't exist anywhere else. The entire plane is the house now. There is no outside. There is no escape. There's just an infinite labyrinth of rooms and corridors and staircases that lead nowhere. All of it threaded with Valgavoth's consciousness. He can feel every footstep, every breath, every heartbeat. He knows where you are at all times, and the house itself bends to his will. Walls shift, doors lock, hallways transform mid-step, and he is always hungry. Some people did survive, not many, not enough, but some. They're called survivors, and they're exactly what the name implies. Smart, tough, resourceful people who've learned how to exist in a place that always wants them dead. Most are nomadic, moving constantly, because staying in one place too long means Valgavoth will find you. They've created something almost like civilization, safe zones, paths between them, treaties with the house itself, unspoken agreements where certain areas are left alone in exchange for, well, No one's not quite sure what the house gets out of it, but the safe zones do exist, and the people cling to them. Then, there are the glimmers. Glimmers are physical manifestation of hope, a survivor's treasured childhood toy, a beloved pet that died years ago, a friend they lost during the Ascension. These things appear as real, tangible beings that offer magical protection against Valgavoth's influence. They're the only reason some survivors haven't gone completely insane. But not everyone stayed human. The Razorkin were survivors once. Now they hunt other survivors for sport. They've embraced the cruelty of the house, turning pain and suffering into entertainment. They build elaborate maze traps and hunt people through them. And they're known for coming back from death, which makes them almost impossible to ever truly escape from. Then, there are the Cellar Spawn, manifestations of Valgavoth's daydreams. They're nearly impossible to kill in combat. The only way to survive an encounter is to run and hide until they lose interest, which they eventually do because they have no memory or ability to hold a grudge. The Beasties are probably the most tragic. They were the plane's pets, dogs, cats, creatures that loved their families. The Ascension transformed them into something else, but some of them kept their loyalty. They're called Keep-Alives now, and they protect survivors when they can. There's even a group that created a mural in the attic depicting what Duskmourn looked like before the house. They add to it over time, preserving the memory of a world that no longer exists. And then, there's the cult of Valgavoth. They believe they're descendants of the original summoner, the one who brought Valgavoth to Duskmourn in the first place. They maintain the house, patch walls, exterminate pests. They see themselves as caretakers of something sacred. Their leader, a man named Victor, is the only one who communicates directly with Valgavoth. They're not entirely wrong to worship him. After all, he is the house. He is their entire reality. The house operates on cycles, 2 of them specifically. First, there are the harrowings. These happen when Valgavoth molts, sheds his form and grows larger. During a harrowing, a surge of malevolence floods through the entire house. Fresh cellar spawn extrude from the walls. Every monster, every nightmare, every Razorkin becomes more vicious. It lasts a few days, and survivors know to hide deep during these periods. Then, there are the quiescences. These happen right before Valgavoth molts. He turns his attention inward, focusing all his energy on the transformation. During a quiescence, the house falls quiet, still dangerous, but less actively malevolent. These periods last a few weeks, and survivors use them to recuperate, resupply, and make the dangerous journeys between safe zones. It's a rhythm, a terrible, predictable rhythm that defines life in Duskmourn. For years, Valgavoth could only feed on the people already trapped in the house. He could force open doors to other planes, but it cost him immensely. He could only do it once every few years, and it drained him each time. Then, the Omen Paths opened. The Omen Paths are stable connections between planes that appeared after the Phyrexian invasion. They make Planar travel accessible to anyone, not just planeswalkers. For most planes, this was a revelation, a chance to explore the multiverse. For Duskmourn, it was a feeding frenzy. Suddenly, Valgavoth had access to an infinite supply of victims from across the multiverse. People wander into the house through Omen Pass thinking they're exploring a new plane, not realizing they're walking into a sentient trap. And Valgavoth welcomes them all. Recently, a group of planeswalkers entered Duskmourn. Kaido the Wanderer, Tivar Zimon, and Nico. They came to rescue Nashi, Tamiyo's son, who'd been lured into the house. They hired a guide, a survivor named Winter who knew the safe paths, the shortcuts, the ways to avoid Valgavoth's attention. She betrayed them, sold them out to Valgavoth in exchange for her own survival. But they escaped anyway, taking Nashi with them, because even in a place as hopeless as Duskmourn, even a house that spans an entire plane, even when betrayed by the one person you trusted, sometimes people still find a way out. But most don't. Most people who enter Duskmourn never leave alive. Duskmourn is what happens when cosmic horror meets personal tragedy. It all started with a lonely girl who just wanted a friend. It escalated into the consumption of an entire plane. and now it exists as a monument to what happens when loneliness, manipulation, and demonic hunger collide. Marina Vendrell still lives in that house. She still believes everything is normal. She still thinks she made the right choice accepting Valgavoth's deal. Because, in her perception, nothing ever went wrong. She can't see the infinite hallways, can't see the survivors desperately clinging to life, can't see the Razorkin hunting through rooms that used to be her childhood home, can't see that her world ended and she's the reason why. Maybe that's mercy. Maybe it's the cruelest punishment imaginable. Duskmourn asks a simple question. What would you sacrifice for companionship? What would you give up not to feel alone? Marina Vendrell gave up everything, and she doesn't even know it. If this deep dive into Magic's most claustrophobic plane resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more Magic the Gathering lore deep dives. Share this with anyone who loves horror that's both intimate and cosmic. What part of Duskmourn's lore hit you the hardest? Let me know in the comments below and tell me, what plane should we cover next? Thanks for watching, and remember, if you ever find yourself in a house with impossible geometry, just run. Don't stop. Don't look back. Just run. We'll dive in again soon.